I wanted to talk a little bit about deconstruction, and because whether one is going through a full-blown dark night of the soul that will end in, the complete obliteration of a sense of me at the center of my life, or whether we've been practicing and broken through to a level of natural being that has caused our system to basically throw up, kind of like throw our structure to the sea. um, all kinds of darkness, and even the darkness of depression or trauma, those may not have so much to do with falling away of structure as much as not enough positive structure to begin with. But the relationship between structure and darkness is a really important one. One of the things that I noticed as my child came into the world was how wide open we come into the world, and how, in a way, acclimated to, in the absence of trauma or early harrowing experience, how willing we are to rest wide open and surrendered to life as it is. And if you watch an infant, they have very little power over their circumstance, but they don't look super upset about it. And if they are cared for in a way that engenders that trust, and they are allowed to know the world through their felt experience and their own pace of learning, the structure that they build to relate to the world through is incredibly flexible, minimal, almost like, as what I think it was Suzuki Roshi said, just enough ego to get out of the way of an oncoming bus. We need some of that to function. And because our culture is really very primitive when it comes to understanding the true development of a soul enfleshed, we are not, our experience as young people is frequently overwhelming. We are confronted with delusional information about people, ourselves, the world. We are punished or corrected when we try and speak from our experience. We are violenced. We are hurt, surprised, shocked, bullied, and then not allowed to digest the emotion that rises from those experiences, nor allowed to consult someone who's actually in the vicinity of reality, because very few human beings in our culture are, in order to make true and real sense of the world. We start to build a structure that just is designed to feel good enough to keep going, in a way, a good enough understanding, the best understanding we could figure out. But it's very important to understand this part, because what happens when we start to turn toward the holy, or what happens when we encounter something very shocking or big to deal with in our lives, is that this structure that keeps the chaotic drives of a disturbed animal at bay starts to deteriorate. And what rises up in our face is all of the disturbance from our young lives. I think part of the coping structure is actually a minimization of what actually happens to young, wide open beings, even in the best of circumstances. And any of us who start to wake up out of our structure start to notice just how harsh the tones are in the people around us, just how disembodied the voices are of the politicians or the newscasters or our neighbors or the people in the coffee shop. the blinders come off and we start to see what a rough reality denying culture we actually live in. And this is part of the crazy making, is that a huge part of the structure and our shared structure, our shared mythology says, America, land of the free, home of the brave, apple pie and, wonderful mothering and wholesome fathering and all this. And so we can start to feel crazy and we can start to be treated as crazy as we reclaim our birthright level of sensitivity and as the blinders come off. And it's actually quite horrifying and grief producing to have the myths of one's childhood fall away and to see open-eyed and plainly just how deeply human beings are struggling and just how harsh and oblivious we are. So this structure that we build is not just a structure in the psyche, it's a structure in the body. It's a whole set of delusional beliefs that we cobble together to make a worldview. Delusional beliefs about ourselves, about others, about how we make it in the world, about reality. And if they were just simply funny beliefs, when confronted with a better belief, we would just replace them. But the challenge is that these learnings have their roots in our bodies and have their roots in our experiences and have their roots in undigested pain. And it's such that to eradicate the deep beliefs that we hold about self and other and world and reality, we have to actually allow the undigested emotional matter that holds them in place to rise and be met. And when something like the dark night happens, or a really intense experience, or any amount of spiritual practice, we'll start to challenge these structures. And as the structures are challenged, they start to deteriorate or erode. We just can't believe in that anymore, but we don't have anything new. And as these things deteriorate, the pain that they were holding in place through numbing, through denial, through distraction, through whatever rituals we had of making it through. And I wish I could paint a picture of this coping structure, because it's an alive, it's like maybe one of these drawings you might see in like a Monty Python movie, just like an amazing machine with energy management, with numbing, with PR, with all these moving parts that just allow us to keep enough of a positive sense, or a reliable sense, because it's not always positive, sense of ourselves and the world together, so that we feel a little bit buffered from the wild chaos that we felt when the world was behaving in painful ways. That was a mouthful. So whether from some kind of intense experience in your life, a spiritual opening, the dark night where your sense of control is completely taken from you and your sense of meaning is gone, and your brain doesn't work, and you think you're supposed to keep it together to get there, but you no longer know where there is, or who you are, or how it's supposed to go well. And meanwhile, all of these, you're being flooded by all of these crazy emotions and delusional stuff. It's quite something, and it's some of the emotional states and lack of meaning and such can be quite terrifying. The pain can be quite intense, and when it goes on for a year or 2 or 3 or 7, it can really feel like life is over, and certainly the life of me is over.